recording. All right, we are now live. Anything that happens now is going to stay and be immortalized. Thank you, Claire, for the welcome. Thank you, Village Books, for hosting us. And thank you to all the authors who are here today who have written and are going to be reading. And even those of you who are not reading, thank you for being here. It's very good to have you. The way we're going to run this is similar to an open mic. I will say so-and-so, in this case, Rena Priest, is going to be up next. And then on deck after her is going to be Linda Conroy, introducing prompts and reading her piece in the prompts book. If ever anything has gone awry, just wave at me and say something has gone awry and we'll figure it out. It's going to be okay. I will be periodically checking to make sure that everyone in the waiting room is being let in. For those of you who are with us, good to see you over there. Back behind me. If your video is on, you will appear on the screen. If your video is off, you will not appear. So if you wish to be hidden, that is a good way to do it. We won't even see you. Without further ado, I think we can just jump right in. Rena, if you would like to come up. Rena Priest is the Poet Laureate of Washington State and our featured author for the Writers' Corner Anthology.
Thank you, David, and hello, everybody. It's good to see everyone coming out for some ride to hear some good words and sharing community. And congratulations on the anthology. It's so very exciting. So my poem is called Squirrel and Wolf Contemplate Perception. It's not that I'm insincere, says Squirrel. It's just that the term squirrely makes everything I do seem comical or naughty. When you see me dragging a sunflower up a tree to survive the hungry winter, you think, oh, that rascal, he's gone and gnawed off all my flowers. I know what you mean, says Wolf. People always mistake me for being so deadly serious. They don't understand how much fun we have. Me and the rowdy pack out in the wild, cold night under the full moon's light, ripping our dinner to shreds.
Thank you so much, Rena. Claire had also asked me to remind the authors that you do have a free copy behind Parkside South, and Rena, that does include you. I saw a receipt in that book, and so I'm watching you. Next up is Linda Conroy, and on deck will be Daniel Kirkpatrick. Please welcome Linda to introduce the prompts group and read her own words.
Wow, look at all these people. Hello, everyone. Now, David just asked me like 5 minutes ago to introduce the group. Let me think, what will I say? I talk about it enough. The prompts group, which has been running for several years, but of course has just restarted again. It's a group that really is a place for people to come to write whatever kind of writing they wish to write, with the help of prompts or exercises to get them going. So we get together, we meet down here quite informally. We kind of pull our chairs together now into a group. And I will typically bring prompts, which might be a quotation from an author that I've read and I really liked, or it might be just a small writing exercise. And then we just go for it. We write for about, maybe 15 minutes. And it doesn't matter if you write poetry or prose or memoir or nonfiction. It doesn't matter what you write, because a prompt will, it gets to the part in your head, right, in your subconscious mind that you want to write about. And so you write from there. And it's quite fun. It really works well, and people write good stuff. And then we listen to each other. We read them to each other. We listen to each other, and then usually we do that again while the group lasts. The hour and a half goes by, and people leave quite content with what they've written. So that suits me. I enjoy making that available for people and coming up with ideas. So I'll give you an example now. I'm going to read my prompts. Came in this book. In this book. Here we go. Now, we started putting the book together when the prompts group wasn't meeting. I was often sending out email prompts to people, and this is a prompt I received from somewhere else. And it's a quote by William Blake: "Everything that lives is holy." And I thought, oh, I really like that. I'm going to write on that. And then I submitted it here. So here we go. Everything that lives is holy. Blake's tree was full of angels, sacred, consecrated to a deity. They shone with light, smooth silken wings across each branch. Delight in what he saw ripped through his soul and told him every living thing was God. Each leaf, each bud, that's what he said. Each blossom, every bird, each man and every woman, and those undecided yet. Each child, born and unborn, every dog and donkey, every mouse and cat, the badger in its set, the rabbit in the shrub, the eagle keeping one eye on the rabbit, each ant that crawls in cement cracks, in spaces in between each brick, things that swim and things that fly and crawl and sing and shriek and cry are holy. Spiders weaving webs, the turtle inching through the mud, earthworms sunning on the path, bats flapping beneath the roof's edge as the day turns. A porpoise diving for a fish, a penguin making awkward steps across ice that melts too fast, a limping deer trying to hurry with the herd as it escapes from fire, a fire that licks its feet and taunts its ear. The bee that settles on the rose, flies and hovers, stings a child's rounded cheek. The mountain lion, tawny, stalking the new lamb. Things that grow so well they flourish. The honeysuckle tied around the apple tree. Ivy strangling the cypress hedge. Knotweed eating up the land. Roots and root hairs, rhizomes, carrying pollutants through the sodden ground. Seeds of the laburnum tree, toxic in bright yellow bloom, and weeds that grow where no weed ought to grow. A world of microbes, germs, and spores, bacteria and viruses, things that learn to thrive and grow so well they kill. Will my tree be filled with angels? A story with a start must also have an end. Can I love each of these living things and not love all? There's no beginning that won't hold the seeds of culmination of its end.
Thank you so much, Linda. Next up, we have Daniel Kirkpatrick, and on deck is Joan Kimball.
Good evening, everyone. Things are hell on beers. I know I'm only supposed to read from my piece. However, I just have to give a word of appreciation to David, who's been working tirelessly for a year putting this whole thing together. So thank you, David. So I'm in the prompts group. My story is called Poetry. So it's a short story, but it's called Poetry. Just for confusion. Marguerite stares out the window. The lecturer is droning on and on at the edge of her awareness. There are, we thus recognize, two contrasting forms that have shaped the field of poetry, the classical and the romantic. We find that in certain genres, it has a hypnotic effect upon her. Out of her ennui, Marguerite wonders if there are certain cadences of words, poetic resonances that carry meaning beyond language, similar to the way radio waves carry sound without themselves being audible. She idly writes out the words sonorous and obvious, droning and monotonous at the margin of her notebook. Perhaps within the on and on hollowness of these tones lies a deeper poetic message. The notion is enough to keep her intrigued for a while. When she first signed up for the class, it had not occurred to Marguerite that poetry could be boring. Her interest in verse had been triggered by a wildly romantic Italian with whom she'd had a torrid liaison over the summer. He, reciting verses of beauty and grace as foreplay and as interlude to the mad bouts of passion they had shared. It was a fiery intimacy that nearly consumed her and that still, to a distracting degree, holds her captive. Shaped by that experience, poetry and passion for Marguerite are inextricably intertwined. So how is it that the beauty of words can become so drab and lifeless? Out of the window of the lecture hall stands a small copse of trees, then a stretch of scrubby land leading up to the rocky escarpment above. It is a dusty landscape in a palette of dusky greens and pallid browns, as different from the brilliant foliage and beautiful flowers of the farm where she'd met Luciano as this stuffy class is from his sensuous poetry. Marguerite shifts in her chair, finding herself warmed anew by the lingering heat of Luciano's love. Ah, love. Maybe not the best word, but there it was. Marguerite has resolved to never write the word itself in any of her poems. It is too confining, too arbitrary, too easily misunderstood. The beauty of language lies in its power to liberate. The richness of the summer liberated her in ways she could not previously have imagined. Someday she will write inspirational, entrancing poems and never stifle the magic that lies within words. As she mulls over that thought, the lecture ends class and everyone shuffles to go. Thank you.
All right, next up we have Joan Kimball. Are you here, Joan? Okay, I was like, I don't know you, so that's a good one to have. And on deck we have Alexandra Lucas.
Greeting the wildcat again. There's a particular physical experience when you are afraid. It wakes you in the night and spreads sweat under your armpits. It also spreads a hot electrical feeling through your chest. All of this happens as you awaken. You don't have a chance to fight it off. Like a wildcat, it pounces on your chest and pins you to your bed before you can lift your head from the pillow. The wildcat of fear is upon you, and all you can do is breathe until the first light of dawn creeps under the shades and dispels the entire scene from your half-lit bedroom. When you awake fully, you say, "Thank God, that was just a dream." But then the wildcat reappears. In the daytime, she is more rational, even gentle, but less easily dismissed. She slips into the room, comes around your bed, and looks down into your half-opened eyes. "I'm so sorry," she says. "I'm so sorry that I am real. I wish I could blow away the reality of my existence, but I am very real." And you realize that the fear you could hold at bay while you stayed busy all day, the fear you met in your dreams, has crept into your peaceful bedroom, sidled up to your soft pillow, and stared into your now wide-awake eyes. There are many ways the wildcat of fear might gain entry into our lives, but the most surefire way to invite her for a visit is to love someone deeply, with your whole heart. You might say the wildcat embodies both fear and love, as they are hopelessly entangled. In fact, I learned about the wildcat first by watching my parents. They had that kind of marriage, you know the one, joined at the hip, finishing each other's sentences, always and always there for one another. We should all wish to have that kind of relationship. Not so fast. When my father started to die slowly of Parkinson's, my mother took it on the chin as well. You can't slip out from under that kind of harness of love. Oh no. You are in it for the long haul, and you wouldn't want to escape, even if you could. So the wildcat visited my mother regularly. When will he lose this function, that function? When will he need help taking a shower? When will he fall? What's in store? What's in store? Fear and love, love and fear, as inseparable as my parents' lives. Having finished with my mother, the wildcat of fear has turned her attention to me. Recently, my husband was diagnosed with my malignant melanoma in situ, which sounds like a charming French gastrum, but actually means cancer hasn't spread yet. This is the best kind of melanoma you can get, as if you have shopped at the grocery store for the best cancer, setting aside the rest. Sorry, but you don't get to set anything aside, and there are no choices at this grocery store. You get whatever is placed in your basket. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Next up, we have Alexander Lucas, and then if Dick Jerry will let me put him on the spot, I would love for you, Dick, to introduce, I'm going to look at you, introduce nonfiction a little bit and also read your piece, if that's okay. But for now, Alexander Lucas.
Yeah, so thank you so much for having me. It's so great to be back here. My prompts piece, the prompt that I used is write a piece about struggling to move from one season to the next, noting the connection between the world outside and your inner world. It's called Sleeping Beauty. For as long as I can remember, my heart has belonged to autumn. As a child, I would lose myself in hip-high piles of fallen leaves, giggling as they crunched beneath my spirited gait. The crisp air was a sign that school, among my most beloved pastimes, was soon to begin again. As nighttime started to stretch into most of the day, I would go on evening walks around the neighborhood with my dad, eagerly assessing how each homestead was preparing to celebrate harvest time. Pumpkins of every shape, size, and color spilled from most doorsteps, a playful reminder that I needed to select my Halloween costume. In high school, I remember playing tennis outside against a backdrop of shivering red, yellow, and orange that fanned the flames of my competitive fire. So you see, I've never understood the view that autumn is a sign of things ending. Nature is only sleeping, restoring itself for a vibrant spring to be. Best of all, autumn is when the creatures of the time from dusk to dawn come out to play. Barn owls, red foxes, and the ghosts that tiptoe through shadows have always been friends of mine, revealing the world to me through their unhurried gaze. Their whispers illuminate a realm alongside our own that so many of us are in danger of forgetting. As long as I walk this earth, I will try not to forget. Perhaps my feelings on autumn and the traditional perspective of the season do intersect. It is a time of transition, yes, but not necessarily a sorrow-filled one. Even now, the smell of mesquite fills my heart with yearning for whatever comes next, and I am not afraid. There is magic in sleeping things, and if you open your heart to the dark, there's no telling what beauty you might find there. Thank you.
Next. Sure. I'm so sorry. Linda Spalding, right?
Dick, I need to put you on pause for 1 second. I did not realize that Linda was here and wanted to read. You are welcome to come up. So we're going to welcome Linda Spalding up to the stage, and then we will have Dick with nonfiction.
Thank you. Thank you.
The name of my piece is East Glacier, Montana, and today kind of feels like East Glacier, Montana. It was back in 1973, cold. So. I lived in a 2-room shack at the confluence of the Blackfeet Reservation and Glacier National Park, the kind of country where wind blew trains off the track and drove snow through my screen door to form drifts on the porch floor. This morning, I pushed the door open a few inches before jamming into a drift. Working the door back and forth, I squeezed out of the opening and shoveled the drift along with the path to my car. More digging ensued as I struggled to stay ahead of the dunes, backfilling my work. Finally, I heard it crunch as the shovel ground into pavement, my destination, the highway. I waddled back to the car, encumbered by layers of clothes and climbed through the only unfrozen back door. Swore as they wiggled in between the two bucket seats and plopped behind the wheel. For once, the car started. My frozen foot pressed the gas pedal. The tires spun and threw snow and rock as I backed onto the roadway. For the next 13 miles, the car lurched through snow-choked cut banks that rose beside the road, creating white tunnels that threatened to engulf me if a snowplow didn't hit me first. Not many employees braved the weather that day, and most who did left by mid-afternoon as the blizzard continued its rampage. Our work finished, several of us huddled around the conference table, drinking scum-coated coffee, gossiping and listening to the trader's metal roof bang and rumble as the wind tried to peel it from its anchors. The boss joined us today, an unusual occurrence. She was private about her personal life, and these afternoon coffee clatches sometimes got personal. I was surprised when that coworker turned to her and said, "Merlin told me you read palms. Is that true?" The boss's face hinted at a scowl. She answered, "Sometimes, but mostly I don't like to tell what I see." Nat asked, "So could you read mine?" The boss grabbed Nat's hand, took a cursory look at her palm, and laid it on the table. "Sorry, Nat, I can't do it." Undeterred, I stuck out my hand. Reluctantly, she picked it up and examined my palm by running her finger along each line. She hesitated at the lifeline, lowered her voice, and said, "You will have a serious health issue in your early 60s, but you will live to an old age." Last week, I called my former boss on her 80th birthday and reminded her that she once read palms. I wondered if she would remember, as she's had several small strokes and an onset of dementia. She laughed and said, "Yeah, I remember that cowboy who had his sleeves rolled plumb up to his elbows. It was easy. I told him what he wanted to hear." And as for me, I'm approaching old age. Her prediction is so far so good.
All right, Jerry, thank you for your patience. We'll have to introduce nonfiction, read for nonfiction, and then we will transition to John S. Green introducing poetry.
Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you.
Okay. I didn't know I was going to be introducing nonfiction, but so far I've been the most visible person in the audience because I'm not usually on the big screen. But during the pandemic, when everything closed down, our nonfiction, we moved to a Zoom way of meeting each other. It's been very successful. We have a lot of really good writers and authors, different levels. And we are still in the process of trying to find someone who might want to be a facilitator at the Village Bookstore itself. And we always meet every first and third Sunday from 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Come hell or high water, except for New Year's Day. We've been doing that. And it's been really good. A lot of good people. And I encourage anybody who's interested, please just text me, and the information is available at Village Books. We just feel really honored that Village Books will, that we can be part of you guys. My piece is something that every soldier probably in every war and has always had a problem with, a difficulty in solving and what to do. And so I'm going to read my piece, several different parts of it. What should I tell her? Song Bay City, Vietnam, August 15th, 1968, early morning. Sleep never came to me last night, even though the expected rocket and mortar attack never materialized. I was wearing my flight suit in bed with my .38 revolver holstered and strapped to my belt. Even then, the slightest noise had me reaching for my CAR-15 rifle, which I kept close by. Since sundown last night, everyone was on edge. As a new forward air controller, or FAC, I'll be spending most of my time flying a single engine Cessna 01 Bird Dog. When I arrived here 9 days ago, I was assigned my call sign, Rod 11, which will be my identification for as long as I'm here. Song Bay is in Phuc Long province, which covers lots of jungle and is sparse in population. The area is swarming with the Viet Cong and North Vietnamese Army. Late afternoon. Although I didn't see it this time, there is little doubt that I received ground fire from the enemy troops below. Reviewing my just completed mission, I have a sobering thought. Over the next 10 months, I shudder to guess how often I'll be the target of the Viet Cong and North Vietnamese Army, or NRA. Early evening. A buzz of activity is coming from the mess hall. Dick, someone calls out from the crowd. Over here by the kitchen. I turn and see Paul waving. Air Force Captain Paul Dawkin is a fellow FAC, also based here in Song Bay. Paul, I need to ask you something. Shoot, what is it? My wife has been asking questions about Song Bay. First, she wants to know exactly where I'm located. And now she's not happy knowing how close I am to Cambodia and the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Any mention in the news about Phuc Long province or Song Bay worries her. How do you handle that? Well, when I first got here, I didn't really put much stock in the stories about Song Bay being more dangerous than most other places in Nam. In less than 2 weeks, it was obvious those stories weren't that far off. So, what do you tell your wife? Thank you.
I have just realized that maybe, oops, that's not what I wanted to do at all. That's okay. But maybe I can do this so that Dick doesn't have to be quite so front and center. There we go. I probably should have thought of that earlier. Next up, we have John Green to introduce poetry and to read his work on deck. We don't have that person here. JL, right? Are you in the audience? I had you as marked down as remote. That's all right, no worries. Next up, we will have Teresa Van Meegen reading, whose author name is Terry Van. But for now, John Green introducing poetry.
Thanks, David. And thanks to Claire and Paul and Kelly and all of Village Books for giving us all a free book. We get a free copy. Don't forget to pick it up. Thanks for your reading, Dick. The prompt group, the nonfiction, fiction, it's all wonderful. About 10 years ago, Shannon Laws started the Village Books Poetry Group. And she encouraged an atmosphere of not just sharing, but learning with encouragement. And that still stands today. She handed over the hosting duties to myself and Linda Conroy, who also does the prompt group you heard earlier. And we grew so large that we split into 2 groups. So there's a morning group and an evening group now that meets for 90 minutes. People bring one poem, usually 5 to 10 copies, depending on what the size is. Currently, we're getting about 10 people, although now it's hybrid. And then you read your poem, you get about 7 to 8 minutes or more if there's less people. And then you get instant critiques verbally and also written down on a piece of paper. So you go home with that. It's really valuable. So for the last 3 years, we've been doing it on Zoom. And now just starting in November, we started doing hybrid again. Our last meeting, we had 5 in person and 5 on Zoom. So do join us. Now I'm going to read my poem in here. It's called Slow Simmer. Our wedding music mix was playing. Only fools rush in, but I can't help falling in love with you. I chopped carrot and celery and slid them into the sizzling onions. My wife was looking out the window as the sun said its goodbyes. What are you thinking about, honey? Oh, just that when we married, we promised each other that we would visit all 6 countries that we each lived in before we met. But we've only been to one, Sweden. And we've been there twice. I threw in a chopped green pepper. Well, we won't be going to Ukraine anytime soon. And Turkey doesn't look too good. But Belgium and Italy, we could visit in one trip, don't you think? Minced garlic joined the pot. Oh, easily. Why not France, Spain, Portugal, Switzerland? Why not all of mainland Europe? That's too much, sweetie. I think 2 or 3 countries at a time is better. You like Japan. Yeah, Japan for sure. I added low sodium chicken broth to the soup base, then turned up the heat. Thank you.
All right, next up, we have Teresa Van Meegen, who's reading under her name of Terry Van. And then on deck, we're gonna have John S. Green again for ABS and Fagan.
So my poem is titled The Rain, and it's for anybody who has the book and want to know, it's on page 70. The rain. We are the evergreen state, the Pacific Northwest. We take our rain for granted. We don't say, yay for the rain. And then we do. Over the summer, an unprecedented heat wave hit, temperatures soaring to the 3 digits. Our lovely green turned to yellow, the land dry and parched. We needed our rain that dutifully comes, but it would not. We had to wait. Finally, it came. Yay for the rain. Massive fires broke out in our state and surrounding areas. People were evacuated, homes were lost, our lungs were congested, our eyes burned. We needed our rain. It always comes, but it would not. Finally, it came. Yay for the rain. Winter came with harsh weather. A heavy snowstorm hit, surrounding us with deep white snow. Though beautiful, it held us hostage. Holding Trump, it caused us cabin fever. Then the rain came and won out, chasing the snow away. Yay for the rain. We are the evergreen state, the Pacific Northwest. We take our rain for granted. We don't say, yay for the rain, until we do.
Thank you so much. I'd like to invite John back up again, and then following John on deck will be Dale Kimball.
Hold your applause, please. So if you haven't noticed, in the dedication right after the index there, it's to Peggy McFadden. Peggy was a longtime poetry member here for many years. It says, thank you for the time you spent writing and sharing your life with us. Your observations of the world were revelations into not only your personal ecosphere, but the greater universe we all seek to understand. Peggy was had a PhD. She had a doctorate in marine biology, and she really appreciated diversity in the ocean. Not only there, but she appreciated diversity in all of nature and all of humanity. Her and her husband had a son, but then they decided to adopt, and they adopted an Asian American girl and an African American boy, and in Pennsylvania, and she witnessed, unfortunately, racial profiling many times with her son, and it saddened her deeply. And this is her poem. The statue in the harbor. Who sees the child of poverty the same in dreams and hopes as their very own? Who reaches out their hands, their arms to hold the child of violence and shelter him from harm? The statue in the harbor stands mute, now cold, a silent stone, but for a simple message, not welcome on our shore. Thank you. It's Peggy.
Thank you, John, for reading that for Peggy. Next up, we have Dale, and on deck, we have Roger Gilman.
Dale's 96.
Good morning, Lord. I watched the sunrise this morning, your sun, Lord. First, the rose-tinted gray outlining the skyline, and the horizon slowly dyed the clouds a delicate pink. Then some rose, then gold, spreading hopscotch. From one to another, brighter and brighter, the arch of color grows, until finally the flaming ball itself breaks out from the bonds of below the horizon. The single paint pod from which the invisible artist comes has drawn forth all these gentle hues. My heart is filled with wonder as my eyes are filled with beauty, enabling me to feast on the magnificence of the world we live in. With our sun and moon, let someone else decide how it all started or how long it will last. Let someone else figure out how or how long, which are planets or solar systems or galaxies. I see only the depth of the painter brush across the sky. I feel the heartbeat of the lover. I want to believe he put it all there just for me today. To clean, I can nourish my soul on splendor and know that I am reason to the stars and brother to the earth and to everyone who draws life from the sun, your Son, Lord.
Thank you so very much, Dale. Next up, we have Roger Gilman, and on deck, we have Linda Conroy reading for Lynn Jerry.
My poem is on page 86, if you're following your hymnal here. We all have reasons for heading out into the wild. And recently I was contemplating the objects of attention, the concerns I had, and had a shift of attitude. This is called objects of concern. Finally, I quit hiking to the little lake in Heather Meadows to crouch, peering into its alpine depth regarding my mindfulness. Today, I sit on a boulder up mountain, eating a sandwich. I track a hawk searching ptarmigan Ridge for baby food. I loosen my boots and embrace the ecology of raptors, a different kind of faith. Then the fog rolls in, but it no longer bewilders me, if it ever had.
Next up, we have Linda reading for Lynn Jerry. And then on deck, we have Eileen Fossum.
Well, Lynn Jerry was a long-time member of our morning country group. She's not going out in crowds so much.
She's here remotely.
Mhm.
She's remote with us.
She's
You can't see her, but.
it was well, hi there. So I hope I'm going to read this as Lynn would like it. I'm going to do my best. Waking before sunset. Old woman stitching. Daylight rises earlier to sing to the night. She sits with your shirt wrapped tight around her shoulders, fierceness flaming red. Memory unfolds backward as she recalls to you to stay a while. In the restless wind, both her mind and tree leaves swirl, build up in corners. She watches again, migration south of snow geese, cycle on cycle, hums a song along the rain, hums a song along the rain, becomes morning dew, the sun erases. Wolf hunger tamed by 80 years, she's now the lamb, as seems nature's plan. She laughs. It's good to embroider the night lights. At summer's dusk, and all hunger wakes, she puts a piece of ripened peach on the curve of her tongue.
Thank you so much to both Linda and to Lynn. Eileen, you are up next, and then on deck we have Carla Schaefer.
In honor of Billy Frank Jr. At the corner of East Chestnut and Railroad, across from the Espresso Cafe, sits an upside-down crate with the metal sculpture of Billy Frank Jr.'s boots. They are waiting. No one is on the soapbox. But if you stand really still, you can hear the salmon running, feel the bone caught in your throat, and see the opening at the mouth of the river, welcoming the upstream fight.
Thank you so much. Next up, we have Carla Schaefer, and then on deck, we have Linda Conroy reading her own.
The bone stuck in the throat and up the river. That's wonderful. Billy would be proud. Reflection. 100 Acre Woods, Bellingham, Washington, January 13th, 2022. With thanks to Misa, their mom, who brought us together with my grandsons Akira, who was 8, and Hiroki, who was 3.5. Entering the woods, Akira explained we would have to go through the portal, have to find the key. I knew, and he did not, that just ahead was a very large freestanding door at the side of the trail that opened to what some would call a meditative space. He stopped when he saw it, exclaimed we would need the key. Then he found the pin to pull and instructed us to place our hands on the door together so we could enter as one. The heavy wooden panel flowed open in silence, welcoming his imagination. After naming the plants, we turned and left through the door. Before it shut, Akira and Hiroki were running along the trail, identifying plants and trees. For their powers, Akira said. For their powers, Hiroki yelled. Red cedar powers, shouted Akira as he tapped the tree. Moss powers, Hiroki called out, running up from behind. Then in turns, ironwood power, cottonwood power, lichen power, sword fern power, Oregon grape power. After a week of more snow than we had seen in years, unvaried temperatures below freezing, the sword ferns lay flattened. On this warmer day, new streams trickled and puddles lay here and there on saturated ground. One puddle claimed a low meadow and made a small pond. It pulled the blue sky and scattered fluff of clouds onto itself. The intimacy of sky and earth, akin to a lover tracing, without touching, a paramour's sleeping lips. Reflecting power, I shouted silently to myself and passed into another portal, where how we live in liaison with the earth, our beloved, her heat and odors. And even while we are fragments of her treasures, our thoughts and feelings desire to couple with the sky, clouds and cosmos above. Pond reveals how, and with shimmer and whisper, yearns for us to do it now.
Thank you so much, Carla. Linda, if you don't mind me re-summoning you to the front. And then on deck after Linda, we're going to have Bob Zaslow.
Is Jackie here? Oh, well, if Jackie wants to read, she can read up her book. That's right. That's fine.
Okay. Still present here. I think of all the times I looked that way, beyond the oak tree in the wind-swept wood, where Rory slowed his jogging stride to listen for the last bright bird song, here beside the rolling sea. I longed to follow him, my son, keep caring eyes on his lone passage, as he gazed and sighed, watching new stars, while the low sun laid his stick-figure shadow long in front of him. Bewildering to see him fade from this peace, the surf, the stumble of 10,000 pebbles breaking with each wave. He moves toward new sounds, living among monuments and libraries, technologies, cultures dance, a life of qualm, complexity, a rich miscellany. In his new mirror, would I see his smile? Will he still turn a yearning ear this way, where nothing changes but the tide? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next up, we have Bob Zaslow, and then on deck, we've got Jackie Albee.
Linda, in his new mirror, would he still see the smiles? Oh, gorgeous. Thank you. This is called Early Spring Despair. Early spring despair moves me to gaze up at 9 wood sparrows on wire, then down to a few apples that survive the sleet and freeze. The sound of my walking sticks wake up ancient sounds of grandma's cane, an ancient taste of her brisket, flaking off decently on my tongue. And the smell of Brasso as she precisely polishes the candlesticks, the one she hid tied under her coat on the crossing from Lithuania to Brooklyn. The sight of her hands making a diamond as she recites the Sabbath prayer 52 nights a year. Her consistency made me a believer, not the Talmud. The sun's glow hides behind my hill now, but despair dissolves like the memories. Even one moment alive is all the glow I need as the 9th sparrow flits off the wire. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Bob. Next up is going to be Jackie, and then we'll have Ken Meyer introduce the fiction session.
Remembering that summer is out there. In the old wooden bridge, creosote bubbles and oozes through cracks. I pull over at the edge of the solitary road. Blackberries, dark as a midnight sky, hang heavy on the bush. Honeybees burrow and buzz, yellow bellies collecting pollen, and goldfinches scatter dandelion wishes. Thorns grasp at my sleeve, blood red juice tattoos across my calloused hands, and tendrils twine around my bare ankles. But discomfort exists outside conscious thought. I'm intoxicated and reach for just one more.
I'm definitely looking forward to some. Next up, we have Ken Meyer to introduce fiction. And Ken, if you want to read your piece now, I think we can limit that up and down.
Okay. What's going on, buddy? All right, so I had an odd thought as I was sitting there, and I'll share with you. Maybe it's not so odd, but I was going to say fiction is everything else. But then I realized as I listened to all these wonderful presentations that almost everything we heard, except for 2 or 3 of the poems, could have been in the fiction group, even if it's nonfiction, because things turn up there that are in genres which have yet to be named. And some of them, I'm not sure if they'll ever be named, but anyway, so we actually have 2 coordinators of fiction around here, and one is also Tom Altruder. Tom, raise your hand or something. It's another way of saying, don't blame everything on me. So, you know, we've had this fiction group for, I don't know, over 10 years. And it's had its ups and downs. We had our Zoom period during the plague, and I can say that wasn't our happiest period. We were in 2 sections, one of them exploded, and I'm not sure what happened there, but anyway, now by March, we might split up again into 2 or even 3 groups. So, you know, what I would say is we don't want to have a lot of people in our groups, but what we want is for you to tell your story. So if you think you have a story, which might be fiction or partially fiction, or something we're not sure what it is, come and give one of our groups a try. And if you don't like what you find there, we'll help you get in touch with some of the other groups around town, like Red Wheelbarrow Writers. I also hang out with them quite frequently. Or there's Whatcom Writers and Publishers, and a couple of others. There's a group for everything. And we all want you to tell your story. So, okay, let's hear some more stories. Well, let's hear some of everything else. All right, I guess the first one, like David said, we'll do mine, but this is about guest workers going from Pakistan to Dubai. And it's called Holding My Giselle, which is kind of an old-fashioned rifle. And it's two people, Hafiz and his uncle Shahryar, going to Dubai. And Shahryar is talking here at the beginning. So, the population of the emirate is small. And so, with the income from the oil, they're all very rich. Anything which involves labor is done by us, or the Bangladeshis, or the Indians. The doctors, the teachers, and the professors, they're all Egyptians and Jordanians. But then what are the Emiratis? That's how it is. They're the bosses, said Sharia. I sometimes wonder if we left, would there be any functioning country here? I mean, would anything be open? Would anything work? I don't think it would. If you walk through the airport, here, look at these boys behind the counters, taking the tickets and moving goods about, except for the policemen and the passport stampers. They're all Indians and Pakistani. They're all speaking Urdu or Pakhtun. It's strange. In the week that followed, Hafiz settled down in his new quarters in the cluster of crude huts south of the creek, which was a waterway bisecting the modern city of Dubai. And there was a strange contrast here. To the north rose the gleaming skyscrapers of the city, but here, where the foreigners worked, it was hardly any better than the poorest corner of the tribal areas back home. The workers were sending their wages home. They didn't want to spend any money on houses in Arabia, and most of them didn't have their families with them anyway. It was for the most part a community of single men. When these foreigners went off every morning in their white launderers outfits, doormen's blue uniforms, and servers' black jackets, they left behind an empty little village with only a few stray dogs running down the streets. And the gas station where Hafiz worked, that was not what he expected either. For one thing, it was a massive complex with 30 pumps. His gray uniform was immaculate, and he was expected to keep it that way. He mostly succeeded in that charge, except for the sleeves, which were always getting smudged. What really stunned him were the autos, which were of many sizes and shapes, most of them larger than what he would see at home. He didn't even know what most of them were, but his colleague, a Bangladeshi named Amr, was giving him basic knowledge in quick English. Oh, this bright red thing? Ferrari. It goes really fast. And there are different limousines. This here, Cadillac. The Emiratis, they like American limousines. And there goes a Mercedes. We have them in Pakistan, said others. Yes, but here everybody has at least one. That little blue thing, it looks like a toy, a Porsche. Some of those little things the sheikhs buy for their boys. It's a plaything, but a plaything that costs 200,000 dirhams. Those are only things, said Hafiz. He meant these are only material things. Amr laughed, and they have so many of them. Anyway, wasn't Hafiz himself here to obtain for himself a little bit of that material prosperity? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ken. Oh gosh, I didn't do an on deck. I'm so sorry. Leslie, are you ready? Is that okay? Can I do it? On deck will be J.W. Donnelly, and now we will hear from Leslie Eden.
What are you doing out there? Hanging in there?
Yeah.
I usually write comedy horror, but this won't be too long.
It's on page 104. Smells like ghost litigation. Summons, Court of Iowa. Malcolm Malik, petitioner, person protected versus Sydney Sadsack, respondent, person restrained. Temporary protection order and notice of hearing, stalking. Clerk's action required none. Next hearing date and time immediately. At Plainstown Court, House the Mortal Plain. The delivery person was suspiciously devoid of feet. That was the first thing that tipped him off. Sydney Sadsack, the process server said, like so many of them, he held a full bouquet of roses, a pathetic attempt to hide his true purpose. Sydney peeked through the mail slot again. Yep, no feet. The process server floated above the porch, his legs ending at the knee. Sydney tried to tiptoe back from the door. The floor creaked and a yellow envelope from Barton and Burton, attorneys at law, slid through his mail slot and hit him in the toes. Sydney hopped around enraged. He lifted the mail slot and shouted through it, "Malcolm Malik is deceased. Death threats won't help anything. Consider yourself served," said the process server. He emitted a half-hearted moan and cruised away. Sydney saw him fade into a mist halfway down the drive. "He's deceased too," Sydney growled to himself. "Let's see what we got now." He opened the envelope. Temporary protection order. This time, Malcolm demanded relief from stalking. He claimed Sydney had been monitoring him for no lawful purpose, and he felt seriously alarmed, annoyed, and harassed. Sydney was prohibited from keeping Malcolm under electronic surveillance, excluded from Malcolm's residence and place of work, and restrained from having any contact. Sydney tossed the papers onto the coffee table and sighed. Ever since he'd moved into the house where Malcolm died, he'd been getting summons, motion for surrender of weapons, notice of small claim, order for competency evaluation, motion for genetic testing, petition for divorce, dissolution. He'd come to this isolated house in the countryside to write, and this is what he got. Sydney left the reams of paper behind and followed his nose upstairs. A man of sensitive olfactory capacity, from the very start, he'd been able to detect Malcolm's presence by smell. Sydney had been a perfumed nose in his previous life before he came to live in this creaky old house in the Midwest. He'd enjoyed the nuance of black truffles, he'd been a cork master at his wine club, and he'd been incapable of taking public transportation. All because of his supremely powerful sense of smell. He often carried a handkerchief soaked in orange oil with him in the street in case of offensive odors, and in this old house, Malcolm's smell was all too apparent to Sydney. That's 3 minutes.
Thank you so very much. Next up, we have J.W. Donnelly, and then on deck is me. Look at that.
Hello. That's good enough. Right, so I'm reading Ice Cream for the Birthday Girl. A rusting VW microbus putters into the quiet cul-de-sac, a coffee-colored rabbit's foot swinging from the rearview mirror. The flaking orange and white paint is an affront to the gray ash and char spreading over the land to the cardinal horizon. Suburban foundations, the homes wiped away like discarded chess pieces, leaving only slabs and scorched yards surround the cracked pavement. The engine dies and the bus rolls to the end of the street before rocking to a halt. The horn blares, there is no echo. The sound spreads into oblivion, reaching on and on over the wastes. Nearby, in the foundation of the end of this cul-de-sac, a metal shelter door swings up and open, flinging dust into the air. A man in denim overalls over red and black flannel climbs out and stands, staring at the chromatic aberration parking at the end of his driveway. His shirt is unbuttoned at the top, revealing a gold cross glistening in the evening sunlight. Pistol held with both hands, he aims at the driver's side window. "Who are you?" he yells. "What do you want?" Driver's door opens. The man continues. "I don't have any supplies to share. Do anything stupid and I shoot. Best you head somewhere else." A woman steps out of the vehicle and stands behind the open door, staring through the rolled down window at the armed man. In a swift motion, he lifts the pistol and fires high over her head. "You deaf? Get back in there!" And his voice catches in his throat. As she steps around the door, the woman looks to be of high school age and tall, about 6 foot. She wears a blue jersey shorts and a Van Halen shirt. The shirt is taut over an uncomfortably pregnant belly. The man lowers his gun, and the woman falls to her knees, Tears dripped from her chin and onto the cracked asphalt, darkening the dust beneath her. Van approaches, leaving the gun on the ground near the entrance of his bunker. "My name's Brennan," said the man. He helped the woman to her feet. "What's your name?" "Lena." 5 years later. Light leaks in a long strip from the ajar bathroom door, illuminating a lucky rabbit's foot and sports bra hanging from Lena's headboard. The doorway to Rebecca's room, left of the bathroom, is still dark. Lena hears her daughter snoring a light gurgle in a quiet bunker. Rebecca turns 5 today. No better time to enjoy their last 2 cans of Beanie Weenies. They would starve within a week, maybe 2, unless she could convince Brennan to part with some of his provisions. Lena barely survived escaping Brennan's bunker less than a year back. She tried scouting the surrounding waste over the past months, but there's no new food to find in the ruined gas stations and grocery stores, and especially no ice cream for the birthday girl. The entry landing of the bunker is Lena's bedroom. She likes to sleep with her bed against the entrance. If anything were to break in while she slept, it would need to get through her and Rufus, the pit bull once owned by the original occupant of this bunker, and Lena before getting to Rebecca. The bunker, built into the side of a hill, is about a mile from Brennan's. He had all the good stuff squirreled away before the world went to shit. A closet stacked floor to ceiling with boxed snack cakes and powdered peanut butter, a walk-in freezer filled with meat, but most importantly, a freezer filled with ice cream.
Thank you so much. On deck after me is going to be Kim Owens. Right there, right in front of me. That's an easy one for me to catch. And then I'm going to go right now. So my story is called Watch Your Tone. Wake up. The dark corner of the world slowly comes into focus. Tatiana, the paralegal, is starting this morning. On her resume, printed out by the person who used to do her job, she listed her 2 degrees in political science and English, in addition to speaking Spanish. She has printed out information regarding different law schools and budgets that would allow for her to attend them. She seems terribly overqualified to work for this small law firm. "Excuse me, Toddy. It's Bill, one of the lawyers from upstairs. Would you mind copying this brief? I'll need it by 5. This is Tatiana's primary function and use here, making copies. Of course, she also had a calendar she maintains, which provides brief glimpses into the outside world. On her first day, the outgoing paralegal, the one who printed out her resume, smiled as they approached the printer. You and this machine would be fast friends. And she was right. First, Tatiana checks that the paper is perfectly placed, not so far in it jams, but close enough to be picked up by the spools. Only then does she press the button to indicate she'd like to make a copy. Quantity, 1. Color, black. Resolution, default. All pertinent information is entered, and an involuntary growl of satisfaction is released. Somewhere deep within it begins to chug away. Tatiana presses the start button after the growling stops, but in between the chug, it starts. That happens for each page, so we just last one, a blissfully quick and easy project compared to so many others. From a copier's perspective, this is the part of her job that makes her irreplaceable. Anyone can be trained to type up reports for briefs and contracts, but only the gifted can befriend a finicky machine. Only one copy job before she leaves for lunch, less than most days. Almost as if he was waiting, Dawn comes in and tries to make copies as soon as she leaves. He hasn't been a paralegal with the company as long as Tatiana, but he already receives the same pay to have his job explained to him 3 times a day. Dawn drops the paper into the copy tray like it's a garbage can. The paper jams in protest. Obviously, Dawn isn't clever to solve simple problems. Next up, we have Kim Owens, and then on deck, we're going to have Raj Gill, virtually all the way from Australia. I know.
Hey, I am reading from my story titled The Walk.
Clay waved one last time to his friend Jeremy and pulled away from the curb of the airport. Singing along to his favorite songs, he headed toward one of his favorite state parks, Reception Pass. It had been a great visit with Jeremy, and he felt energized despite a slight hangover from going out the night before. Once he reached the park, he pulled up to the kiosk at the entrance. "Hi, I need to purchase an annual pass. Mine expired," he said to the ranger on duty. "Sure, I'm guessing you've been here before, so you won't be needing a map." Actually, I thought I'd try the trails along the points on the south side of the park," Clay said. "I just noticed them on a map. The park I was showing a friend who was visiting." "Sure, it's beautiful and quiet on that side of the park." "Well, I'm sure most people want either water views or to be on the beach." Clay patted Muffin, who was sitting in the passenger seat. "But Muffin and I want to try something different, a little change of pace from our normal beach walks." "It'll be cool on a hot day like today. Have fun. Nice car, by the way." "Thanks. My wife isn't impressed with it, but old Mustard and I have been together for a while," Clay said about his mustard yellow Volvo wagon. "I hope to have many more years together. Have a great day." Clay followed the road along as it curved on the south side of the park. The trees were taller on this part of the park, but the view opened up as he came across a corner and looked down into a small bay. A few trucks with trailers were parked close to the boat ramp. Only 2 other cars without trailers were there. Clay chose a spot close to the restroom. The coffee he and Jeremy had drank while driving to the airport had made its way through him. Relieving himself, he took Muffin out of the car and put his wallet and phone in his back pocket. While skimming the map the ranger had given him, he patted his pocket one more time and gave one push down. These pants had a way of pushing things out of his pockets. He stepped into the forest. He took a deep breath. The smell of green filled his nostrils, green mixed with the brown of pine and the red of raspberries. His gaze wandered up the trunks of the trees. They stretched up to the sky with blue just peeking through, but otherwise surrounded by different shades of green. He stared for a moment, taking in all the green, the dark green of the pine needles, the almost neon green of the alder trees with the light shining on them, and the deep green of the ferns. He spotted a wild raspberry patch and snapped on a few as he walked. Next time he'd bring a container to take some home. He smiled and felt his body relax. He looked at the map when he got out of the car and remembered he needed to turn right at the first branch of the trail. His mind wandered back to Jeremy's visit. It had been great to reconnect. They spent the weekend exploring the local beaches that since Jeremy lived in the mountains of Colorado. Chatting with someone about the challenges of marriage and fatherhood had been satisfying. A stick cracked under his foot. Muffin lifted her head to stare at the ferns around them. "Why are your hackles up, girl? It's just me stepping on a stick. See, it stopped. Come on, let's get a move on."
Thank you so much. Next up, we're going to have Raj Gill, and then on deck will be Ken Meyer reading for Diane Meyer. Raj, I'm gonna pin you.
Hey, Ron. Replace him. All right, Raj, you're set. You're our center of our attention.
All right, hello everybody. Thank you for having me. All right, let's see. Okay, reading Mall Life. I woke to a faint but familiar sound of water trickling down a hollow pipe. I opened my eyes and found a man relieving himself in the drinking fountain. He stood on the tips of his toes like a child at a urinal, pressed his hands against the steel edge to brace him of his weight. I panicked. This man clearly had a wanton disregard for the rules of the game we played. His brazen act would surely draw unwanted attention, and I didn't need that kind of exposure, not now. I retreated further into my camouflaged sleeping bag, knowing for the moment I'd be protected behind a wall of faux sword ferns. The man stumbled away from the fountain and pulled his pants above his waist. He peered over his shoulder as though confirming no one had caught him with his pants down. Satisfied, he sauntered ahead, avoiding the slices of light that filled the foyer. As I watched him, I realized he'd stumbled in and out of the security camera's view. In preparation of living at the mall, my first task included memorizing the location and field of view for each security camera. This turned out to be no small feat. I befriended Old Man Stan, the security guard, by buying him lunch more times than I'd like to admit. We ate at his desk in a small room of monitors that tracked mall patrons shuffling en masse. While I studied the video feeds, he'd tell me stories from a bygone era or about the family and friends he'd lost over the years, or list all the reasons why mine had been the worst generation. But the man who defiled the public drinking fountain clearly hadn't gone through this effort, and it showed. The man stood before the plastic mannequin family I'd admired a few hours prior. He tapped the glass as though trying to get their attention. I wanted to scream, "Shut the hell up, you're going to get us both caught." But I could do nothing more than try to squeeze a piece of cedar bark in my hand until it gave. He turned his back to the family and attempted to stand in the same pose as the little girl in the window. He raised his arms to 10 and 4. His tattered shirt rose above his belly button, and his abdomen bulged like dough from a compressed canister. He appeared unsteady, standing on one leg, and I half suspected it had more to do with an engorged liver than an inherent lack of natural grace. He peered over his shoulder and seemed to realize he'd mimicked the mirror image of the girl. He reset, switched his legs, lifted his arms to 2 and 8, but he struggled to keep the statuesque pose and tripped backwards, slamming against the window. A hairline crack erupted from where his pelvis met the glass. I watched his neck crane as he followed the fissure line that split the window from floor to ceiling. I spoke under my breath as he studied the crack in the glass. "Don't do it, just walk away." The man pressed his palms against the glass and pushed.
Thank you so much, Raj. It's good to have you here with us. Oh, folks, my mom just joined the waiting room.
She's here, that's counts.
Okay, I'll read it all over again for your mom.
Yeah. Next up, we have Ken Meyer reading for Diane Meyer, and then on deck, we have Wendy Chambers.
Okay, I should clarify first, Diane and I are not actually related, but that's maybe the last thing. We call each other Cud. Who knows, maybe we are related, I don't know. When I told her I was going to read this for her, she said, "Well, wait a minute, how are you gonna fit that into 3 minutes?" Well, watch this, Diane. So her piece is called Season of the Witch, and it's best that I don't tell you what page it's on because I'm gonna skip over a bunch of the sentences and stuff. Have to. All right, so it starts out. Once I had a friend who had good sense, and he gave me advice. If you find yourself in bad circumstances, he said, think about how you got there, and then don't do it again. Let's go up to where she's talking about her keys. One evening, she looked at her purse and said, "This purse is a jumble, overfilled, it seems strained." You decide it's time. So after a quick meal, we're skipping that part. She takes all the keys and she's looking at them. It's no longer just a key ring. Over the years, you have linked new rings to old. It has become an ugly penitential bracelet or a rosary, a chain that snags on the purse's lining and tears away webby silk strands that curl around the purse's contents, puckering the lining. Haven't you noticed how its weight drags at the various locks? No wonder it's a struggle opening your door in the evening. So you begin. You remove from the chain any keys you no longer need. That's a slow process. So instead, you unhook the rings, free all the keys, and sort out only the keys you still need. You feel good about this. A skeleton key catches your attention. You pick it out of the heap of discards. Have to, and remember, it was your last apartment in St. Louis, 1976, a second floor shotgun apartment in the Delmar Loop. This simple key, everybody all over the city had it. In this case, it opened the kitchen door onto the shadowy back stairs, down to the alley, and the cellar. It's the key you gave to Dan. It was Dan's key for years, until one day he gave it back to you. And that tiny Samsonite key, that was the briefcase you carried to work in the 1980s, dressed up in your power suit, wine red wool, your best. The following month, your neighbor goes on vacation. She asks you to water her plants and feed and clean up after her cat. And she hands you a key, which you add to your key ring. You're surprised, irritated, encumbered. This extra key crowds your ring. You're so glad to see your neighbor return, so you can give her the key back. In November, you lose your job. 3 keys come off your ring. When your car breaks down in January and you learn what the repairs will cost, you think it over. Seeing the dark's getting harder. What other weaknesses and dangers do you have that you don't recognize? A time must come when you no longer own an operating car. Now's as good a time as any, so you sell the car to the mechanic. When the door and trunk and ignition keys are stripped off your ring, you're left with only your front door and mailbox keys. And you ask yourself, for how long?
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Wendy Chambers. Wendy, come on down.
My first time.
Good. You gotta be confident with the mic.
Oh, that's an invitation. Page 201. Take him for a test walk. Eleanor stood staring down at the leash in her hand. It wasn't actually attached to anything. Not yet, anyway. Jenny had said, it's a big teddy bear. He wouldn't be a bit of a bother once they'd gotten used to each other. And the clincher, there's nothing like a dog for companionship. She looked up to meet the big brown eyes of a 90-pound puppy, now solely in her hair. He had dribbled a sizable puddle on the floor in the shape of a figure 8 as he circled and rubbed against her until he had her backed against the door. She was rethinking this whole companionship deal. Living alone wasn't so bad, really. His huge bark and scrabbling at the door had catapulted her brain into the video clip she'd seen where police dogs latched on to fleeing suspects. She'd held out her left arm as she entered, thinking, at least this way she'd be able to drive herself one-handed to the hospital and bit it off. The dog had not bit it off. He hadn't even nipped, but Huffington Barkworthy, Eleanor gave a mental eye roll at Jenny's choice of dog names, had greeted her with 2 paws to the chest, a few dozen headbutts, and finally a glistening nose that made her glad her coat was long enough to hide this strategic wet spot. Huffington was a Rottweiler. He certainly looked like he could strap on a canine vest and run down criminals. So he'd be a good test if Eleanor was meant to be a canine compatible. He was about 2 years old, but Jenny had told her he had another year of growing to do. And while he was making good progress on his training, he wasn't exactly ready for Westminster. Eleanor had agreed to house and pet sit while Jenny and her husband Mark were hiking the wilds of Colorado. At 32, Eleanor had never had a dog before. She'd always wanted a dog, but her dad had always claimed he was allergic. After college, she lived alone, and pet-friendly apartments were expensive. Well, for the next 2 weeks, she would be a dog mom. She'd get a feel for having someone to share the space with, another heartbeat in the house. Step 1, take dog for walk. Eyeing the little silver ring on the dog's collar, she made a few attempts to snag it with the leash clip as Huffington body pressed her to the door with excitement. Nothing happened. Sit, she demanded, pushing on his rump. Down! He flopped down and offered his belly for a rub. Eleanor cautiously lowered herself to the floor and rubbed with her left hand while trying for the ring again with her right. Success. She slowly started to rise, but Huffington, sensing they were now dressed for the outing, was on his feet in an instant, nosing the door. Hold on, she gasped, grabbing the little pouch of treats and the poo baggies.
Thank you so much, and thank you again to everyone who came out. Thank you to all of the authors, all of the editors, all the people who read the work and helped us pick the pieces. This would not be possible without the huge number of people involved. Huge thank you to Village Books for everything that they've done. And yeah, give a round of applause to everyone who did such a wonderful job.